Hey, I want you to look at this still photo that I found while I was watching this so-called documentary on the Spanish flu of 1918. And this is supposed to be somewhere out in Kansas. And what I want to call your attention to is in the far left corner. It's the water tower. I want you to notice how the water tower is lined up symmetrically with the electrical lines. Again, my thesis is that the water towers have nothing to do with water. They are the electrical harvesting devices that have been used in times past to get the electricity out of the ether and into the system or the grid. And the electrical wires are basically a grid. And that grid sort of mimics or imitates the grid above, which is in the ether or the air. So it captures from the air and goes into the wires. So where does one get electricity? Out in rural Kansas. And I guess this is just, that's where it's supposed to be, rural Kansas. So where does the electricity come from? Well, folks don't ask those kinds of questions because nobody really wants to think too much about it. But here is one possibility for you to consider, that the so-called water towers had nothing to do with water. They were capturing that electricity in the air. Take a look at how it's just lined up perfectly with the electrical poles in this town. I am not sure of the location of this photograph, but I believe the commentator said out in Kansas somewhere. The electricity is above us, and there's no generating stations in your town. And if you try to find one, you will not find one. There are harvesting devices that harvest the electricity and then put it into the grid system. Hoover Dam is a hoax, by the way. That's the first thing people will say. What about Hoover Dam? Well, you can research that if you want, but there's some very weird symbolism out there, and that's because the weird symbolism is telling you basically it's a hoax. You don't need a Hoover Dam. That was built as like a gigantic hoax, so people would never catch on. The interesting thing is that people now believe in solar power, and they have solar cells and things like that that actually do capture electricity. But you got to go from that idea to the next idea, like, well, gee, then where is my power station getting the electricity? The answer is simple: right out of the air. And water towers were never really water towers. They were devices that were designed to help capture the electricity that flows out in the ether or the air. So anyhow, taking you back to the photo, and again, it's just a photo. It brought that to my mind, and I thought I would capture it while it's right in front of me on my screen. So I thank you for listening, and I'll try to keep pursuing this for you if you're interested. Thank you very much. This ends the video.